Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast. Good morning. It's Friday the 30th of January. I'm Caroline Hepke in London.
And I'm Stephen Carroll in Brussels. Coming up today, the White House prepares for the US president to nominate Kevin Warsh as the next chair of the Federal Reserve, as Trump says he'll reveal his pick today.
The US considers a range of expanded options for striking Iran as the goal of any military action remains unclear.
Plus, succession drama in real life. The $40 billion Swedish family empire set for a handover of power.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Bloomberg understands that the Trump administration is preparing for the president to nominate Kevin Warsh as the next chair of the Federal Reserve. Donald Trump says he now plans to announce his pick for Fed chief later today. According to one source, the former Fed governor visited the White House yesterday. Speaking last night, President Trump teased his impending announcement without giving the name away.
I'd rather say it tomorrow, but just an outstanding person and a person that won't be too surprising to people. A lot of people think that this is somebody that could have been there a few years ago. It's going to be somebody that is very respected, somebody that's known to everybody in the financial world, and I think it's going to be a very good choice. I hope so.
Donald Trump speaking there. Sources who spoke to Bloomberg on the basis of anonymity warned that the selection is not final until the announcement is made.
Kevin Warsh served on the US Central Bank's Board of Governors from 2006 to 2011 and has advised President Trump on economic policy. If nominated and confirmed, he would succeed Jerome Powell, whose term ends in May. Stocks fell and Treasury yields pushed higher on bets that Warsh will become the next Fed chair. Mike McKee is Bloomberg's international economics and policy correspondent.
The thing about Warsh, and the reason you're seeing markets react the way they are at the moment, is that he was very, very hawkish when he was on the Fed before. Even when inflation was low, he wasn't ready to cut interest rates. And obviously, that's completely contrary to what President Trump wants. So how does he handle that, and how does he see the role of interest rates in keeping the economy afloat and bringing inflation down?
Mike McKee speaking there as Warsh has aligned himself with the president in recent months. He's notably been arguing publicly for lower interest rates and going against his long-standing reputation as an inflation hawk.
The arrival of a US aircraft carrier strike group in the Middle East means President Donald Trump has new options to carry out his threats to attack Iran. The group has about 45 aircraft, but President Trump's goals remain unclear, with his message shifting from removing Iran's leaders, punishing the regime for its deadly crackdown on protesters, or extracting a new nuclear agreement. The New York Times is reporting that the US president has been presented with an expanded list of potential military options by the Pentagon. According to the newspaper, the current set of options even includes the potential for American forces to carry out raids on sites inside Iran, and that officials say Trump is taking a similar approach to Iran as he did to Venezuela.
Apple has delivered record quarterly sales and a better than anticipated forecast for the current period. Sales at the tech giant trounced Wall Street estimates, jumping 16% to $143.8 billion in the final 3 months of 2025. Bloomberg's chief correspondent Mark Gurman says it's hard to put into words just how good the results are.
Massive quarter. This is a home run, their greatest quarter ever by orders of magnitude. It's a gigantic beat on overall revenue. China is back. You have a big beat on the iPhone in particular. $85 billion quarter is just insane. The installed base, 2.5 billion. The numbers are just beyond excellent.
Bloomberg's Mark Gurman setting out the positive results there, driven by the iPhone 17. But Apple has warned that rising component costs are threatening to squeeze margin. In news that clouded the record quarter, according to CEO Tim Cook, the company expects more of an impact to gross margins in the current period.
A sizable proportion of cars sold in Europe are now made by Chinese brands. That's as demand grows for hybrid and battery-powered vehicles. Bloomberg's Tiwa Adebayo has more.
Chinese automakers were responsible for nearly 1 in 10 cars sold in Europe last month. It's a record share that comes off the back of a bumper year, led by soaring sales of electrified vehicles. Manufacturers in China use their competitive edge in battery technology to outpace rivals in Spain, Italy and the UK. But the nation's growing foothold also spotlights the immense strains facing Europe's car-making sector, squeezed by tariffs and evolving demand. And so far, there's no sign of any let-up as Chinese names double down on expansion efforts across the continent. In London, Tiwa Adebayo, Bloomberg Radio.
President Trump and Senate Democrats have reached a tentative deal to avert a disruptive US government shutdown. The deal would fund the Homeland Security Department for 2 weeks to allow more time for talks. Democrats are seeking requirements that DHS agents use body cameras and obtain judicial warrants. But lawmakers are almost certain to fail to enact the measure before a Friday night deadline.
And Donald Trump has warned the UK and Canada against striking fresh business deals with China. Speaking to reporters yesterday, the president advised against attempts to forge closer relations with Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China. Canada is not doing well. They're doing very poorly, and you can't look at China as the answer.
President Donald Trump speaking there hours after the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer met China's Xi Jinping in Beijing. The UK government announced yesterday that China will relax rules for British tourists and business travellers, allowing them to enter the country visa-free for stays of less than 30 days. Starmer's visit follows that of Canadian leader Mark Carney, who rolled back tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles previously imposed to match US levies.
And those are our top stories for you this morning. Now let's look at the markets. Over in Asia, stocks are dropping. The All-Country World Index is down 0.1%. MSCI Asia Pacific Index down 0.7%. The dollar on the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is stronger, about 0.25%. Treasury yields are currently up about 3.5 basis points this morning. Historically hawkish Kevin Warsh being seen increasingly by markets as President Trump's pick for Fed chair. Gold this morning is sliding down 3.5%. Remember, the LME, the London Metals Exchange, also suffered a one-day delay yesterday. Oil prices for Brent crude futures are down 1.3%. Those are the markets.
In a moment, we'll bring you more on President Trump's preparing to announce his pick to lead the Federal Reserve, plus inside the succession drama at a $40 billion Swedish empire. But another story that we've been reading this morning: if you could safely implant a chip in your brain to enhance your intelligence, would you? Caroline.
Are you seriously asking me? Shudder. Absolutely shudder. I just don't think I could do it, but I'm fascinated that others might.
Bloomberg Opinion's Parmi Olsen has been writing about this. We know that Elon Musk is among those who has ambitions in this area with Neuralink. Others are researching it too. Now, Parmi says there are parallels to other innovations. Take, for example, Silicon Valley investing trillions in building artificial general intelligence, despite no consensus on what AGI actually even means. And companies apparently are even backing away from that as well. So plenty of enthusiasm for it. But even Neuralink's chief surgeon has admitted that pharmacological agents like LSD are perhaps more promising for brain plasticity research than electrode-based chips. Now, there is progress being made in this area which can help people who have disabilities or are suffering from particular neurological diseases. And Parmi's argument really is that perhaps Musk and his ilk should be better directing their research towards that end rather than necessarily just trying to be the smartest person in the room.
And there have been amazing improvements, haven't there, in terms of the research that's being done to help people, who have mobility issues, very, very severe ones sometimes, using, engineering to try to help people maybe who are paraplegic and quadriplegic. So that would be, wow, an amazing game changer, wouldn't it?
I also just find this idea of wanting to use this technology to be the smartest person in the room. I mean, AI would want to be a lot more reliable before you plug it into your brain. Could you imagine how insufferable literally everyone would be for people, confidently spouting opinions with very little relation to what the actual evidence is based on it, just because their chip implant has told them this is what they've scraped off the internet as a piece of information.
Well, it would save me from the iPhone being, flourished during the dinner party, at least.
True. Yes, people would be much more people would be much more polite, perhaps, in that sense. But anyway, a bit far away is what we've learned from Parmy Olsen's piece. But you can read the full thing at bloomberg.com/opinion.
Okay, so let's think about what we're expecting today. President Donald Trump says that he will announce who he has picked to lead the Federal Reserve later. Bloomberg has learned that the administration is preparing for the president to nominate former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh as the new chair to replace Jerome Powell. Bloomberg opinion columnist Daniel Moss joins us now for more. Kevin Warsh is one of the names who's been circulated for this role for some months now. Why do you think that President Trump would have picked him?
In the event that Warsh does get the nod, you can see a direct line from Warsh's earlier career till now. He is a former Fed insider, worked in the George W. Bush White House, a former deal maker on Wall Street. He was always going to be in consideration for a top role in a Republican administration. Trump considered him in 2017, but went for Jay Powell instead. So despite Warsh's history as an insider, as a Fed governor from 2006 to 2011, he has carved out a space for himself as a trenchant Fed critic, and he's been nodding to all the things that Trump likes to hear. He wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal late last year, which hit all those touchstones, was critical of Jay Powell, lashed the Biden administration's record, said that President Trump had not been getting the credit he deserves. So it's been a really expert refashioning.
So would his nomination, if confirmed, mean that we would get a more dovish Fed then, given what we've been hearing from Kevin Warsh in recent years?
I think that's really hard to gauge. Trump has said he's looking for someone who'll cut interest rates. The Fed is inclined to ease a bit more this year, so whoever is picked is sort of leaning against an open door. But again, I want to go back to Warsh's record as a Fed governor. A lot of the dovish positions that the Fed took from 2007 to 2009, the financial crisis, and then in the aftermath, guess how many times Kevin Warsh dissented? It looks like a donut, 0. So in recent speeches, he's criticised the expansion of the balance sheet. He's criticised Fed activism. Granted, there was a crisis from 2007 to 2009. He hung around the Fed for a while afterwards. You can see in some of the latter month discussions of his tenure, he was uneasy about ramping up the balance sheet again. In the end, not uneasy enough to dissent.
Yes, but maybe, I suppose, restoring ambiguity feels much more familiar to markets than anything else. What do you think it actually means, if he is confirmed, for the issue around Federal Reserve independence?
It depends what you mean by that. So in his press conference this week at the end of the FOMC meeting, toward the end, Jay Powell was asked whether he had any advice for his successor, whoever that person might be. He emphasised a couple of things. Among them, that the Fed's democratic accountability comes through Congress. Way back when, Ben Bernanke gave similar advice to the incoming Janet Yellen, which is, remember, Congress is our boss. Now, Congress designed the Fed through a series of bills to have insulation from the executive branch. Now, just how that works in practice, given the president's, bombastic critiques of the Fed, just how it works under the next chair will be something to watch. My guess, if that person is Kevin Warsh, you're going to see pragmatism take over before too long. It's hard to gauge, any sort of distinctive philosophy or ideology based on his record.
Okay, well, we'll await that announcement with interest. Bloomberg opinion columnist Daniel Moss, thank you very much. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this. To Sweden now, where the powerful Wallenberg family is said to have sway over 40% of the companies on the local stock exchange. As one generation reaches retirement age, they're looking to achieve a smooth transition of power to a new crop of faces. Our Sweden Bureau Chief Charles Daly joins us now for more on this story. Charles, firstly, tell us about the Wallenbergs and the scale of their investments.
It's not an understatement to say that in Sweden, this family is really viewed as business royalty. For 6 generations, they have played an oversized role in the corporate life of the Nordic region's biggest economy. By first building what is now the country's largest bank, SEB, to holding an unparalleled range of industrial stakes across public and private markets. And that all basically means a portfolio worth about 350 billion krona, or almost $40 billion. And it includes major stakes in companies such as Ericsson, EQT, and AstraZeneca. The ownership is held by foundations, not the family members, which is an important distinction, I think. And 80% of the dividends from that portfolio fund research and education. The rest can be reinvested. And I also think it's worth mentioning that through a system of dual-class shares, the family not only owns stakes in these various companies, but can control the direction of the businesses by having a relatively high proportion of voting rights in relation to the capital held. And this uneven system of voting power has courted controversy in recent years. But the family argue, as they indeed told us, that it fosters responsible long-term ownership in good times and bad.
Your reporting is so interesting. Tell us about what this transition is that is taking place right now and who the new faces are who may take up key roles.
Absolutely. It's a really interesting time for the family. They are currently led by 3 patriarchs from what is called the 5th generation, one of which is a gentleman called Poker Wallenberg, whom we spoke to at length for the purposes of our story today. As these 3 are all nearing retirement age, a process of appointing the next generation of family members began formally last year. This 6th generation, as they're called, is a collective group of 30 individuals in their 20s and 30s. And, you know, they have varying interests and experience across business, law, finance, and research. So far, there's been board appointments from the 6th generation at private equity giant EQT, as well as the family's main holding company, Investor AB. And just this week, in fact, there was another announcement for lender SEB, which said it was going to nominate Martina Wallenberg to its board, and she is 36 years old.
And of course, the changing cast is also casting some questions about the Wallenbergs' influence as well. Can this new generation maintain the family's position and sway?
Yeah, it's a really good and difficult question. The family will certainly hope so. And under Poker Wallenberg's leadership, they have been planning for an orderly handover of power for at least the past 10 years. The new crop of Wallenbergs, though, will no doubt have to deal with continued challenges to this dual-class share system. And I think that's especially true in a world of increased scrutiny around governance. There's also a rising billionaire class in Sweden, as tech entrepreneurs from the likes of Spotify and Klarna increasingly dominate the country's rich lists. And only time will tell if these business owners will emerge as challengers to the crown, or if the new generation of Wallenbergs can maintain their grip on power.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.